This video is about the A major and the D major scale. These are two of the first scales that I teach my students when we're approaching the concept of scales and finger patterns. So let's start with the A major scale. The A major scale has these notes in it: A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And while some students might not be familiar with the note names at this point, these notes correspond with the beginner finger tapes we regularly put on a violin for young or beginner students. So now I'm going to say it with the finger numbers. So open A string, first finger on A, second finger on A, third finger on A, open E string, first finger on E, second finger on E, third finger on E. Okay? And here's that pattern as played on the violin. Okay? So when I teach this, I usually use the pepperoni pizza rhythm because it's a rhythm that my students are very familiar with from the very beginning. So when we're learning a new concept with our left hand, it's much easier to do so when you're using a bowing pattern that you're very familiar with, and then you can change the bowing pattern later when you're more familiar with the pattern on the left hand. So here is A major scale with pepperoni pizza. I'm going to go all the way up the scale and then I'm going to come down. And when I do this, I do not repeat the top note. Okay? Here it is. So the A major scale takes place on the A string and the E string. When we play the D major scale, we take that exact same finger pattern, exactly which note sits next to which note, where you start, and we put it on the D string. So for instance, for the A major scale, we start with open A. For the D major scale, we start with open D. The notes of the D major scale are D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So D, first finger on D, second finger on D, third finger on D. Open A, first finger on A, second finger on A, third finger on A. So I'm going to play this scale using the pepperoni pizza rhythm again. I'm not going to repeat the top note, so as soon as I get to the top, I'm going to come straight down. And you'll see when you look closely at my left hand that the pattern that I'm using is exactly the same. My first finger sits by itself, and my second and third finger sit next to each other on both strings. And this is the case for A major and D major. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, right? And in D major, it's D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So you always have that space between 1 and 2 and 3 are always sitting next to each other. So here is D major. have a few things that I like to keep in mind when I'm working on my scales, when I'm teaching scales to others, and when I'm practicing them myself. I try to keep the motion of my fingers on the left hand quite small. So when my hand is ready to go, each finger is like a little helicopter hovering over its spot. When it's time to take that finger off the string, it goes back to its hovering position. So from far away, you actually don't see a lot of difference, right? It's pretty small. If my fingers were doing this all the time, making my scales go faster would be really, really difficult. So as you practice your scales, make sure that your fingers stay pretty close to the string, and when they're not down, they're hovering like little helicopters. And that's the D major scale and the A major scale, 1 octave.